My name is Daniel. 3 years ago, I bought a tiny house in the forests of northern Montana, nearly 40 miles from the nearest town. The listing promised friendly neighbors who valued privacy. Looking back, those words still haunt me. The first week felt like paradise. No traffic, no emails, no phone calls, just endless trees and complete silence. My phone barely had a signal, and the nearest help was hours away. Only 5 other tiny houses stood nearby. Everyone kept to themselves except one man named Walter. Every time I saw him, he would stop, stare at me without smiling, and then quietly say something I would never forget. The first time we spoke, he asked, "How long are you planning to stay?" I laughed and answered, "Forever, hopefully." He didn't laugh. Instead, he quietly replied, "Nobody stays forever." Then he walked away. 3 nights later, I woke at exactly 2:13 a.m. Something scraped against the side of my tiny house, slowly, like fingernails dragging across metal. I grabbed a flashlight and looked outside. Nothing, only trees. The next morning, I found 3 long scratches running across the aluminum siding, too straight to be made by any animal. I convinced myself they were caused by branches in the wind. The following night, it happened again. Scratch, 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 always between 2 and 3 in the morning, every single night. Eventually, I installed security cameras. The footage showed something even stranger. At exactly 2:17 a.m., every camera lost signal for 40 seconds. When the recording returned, the scratches had already appeared. A few days later, my generator suddenly stopped working. No electricity, no internet, no lights. The nearest repair shop was almost 4 hours away. That evening, Walter knocked on my door carrying an old lantern. He handed it to me and said, "You'll need this." I asked, "How did you know my generator broke?" He smiled for the first time and answered, "They always do." Then he walked away. That night, I heard footsteps circling my tiny house. Slow, calm, patient. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I peeked through the blinds but saw nothing. Yet every time I stepped away from the window, the footsteps started again. When morning came, there were no footprints outside. Instead, the grass around my house had been pressed into a perfect circle, as if someone had walked around it for hours. The other residents became uncomfortable whenever I mentioned the strange noises. One woman whispered, "Don't ask questions after dark." She looked genuinely terrified. Later that week, I drove into town for supplies. The cashier noticed my address and immediately became serious. "You live out there?" he asked. I nodded. He leaned closer and quietly said, "You should leave. People have been disappearing in those woods since the 1970s. Back home, I searched old newspaper archives. Missing hikers, missing hunters, missing campers, even a park ranger. No bodies were ever found. Every disappearance happened within 15 miles of our tiny house community. That night, someone knocked exactly 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. I opened the door. Nobody was there. Only a small wooden carving lying on the steps. It showed a strange circle filled with symbols. The same carving hung from Walter's mailbox. The next evening, I secretly followed my neighbors into the forest. They gathered around an ancient tree stump, each carrying a lantern. One by one, they placed wooden carvings into the center of the circle. Then, without warning, every single person slowly turned and looked directly toward the place where I was hiding. Walter spoke in a calm voice, "The newcomer is watching." Every lantern went out at once. Total darkness. Then I heard dozens of footsteps rushing toward me. I ran through the forest as branches tore at my face. Behind me, the footsteps kept getting closer. There were far more people chasing me than I had ever seen. I reached my tiny house, locked every door, and held my breath. Then a whisper came from my bedroom window, "You've already been chosen." The next morning, my truck was disabled. The tires were slashed, and my emergency radio was gone. Someone wanted me trapped. For the next 3 days, strange symbols appeared on the trees around my home, creeping closer each morning. On the 4th night, I looked outside and saw more than 20 silent figures standing between the trees, watching my house until sunrise. At dawn, I escaped through the forest and eventually reached a highway where a passing truck driver rescued me. But when I returned with the sheriff, the entire tiny house community had vanished. No homes, no roads, nothing. County records showed the place had never existed. Walter was gone. So were the neighbors. Yet I still keep the wooden carving they left on my doorstep. Last month, another one arrived with a note. You left before the ceremony. If you ever dream of living alone in the wilderness, remember this. Sometimes the real danger isn't being isolated. It's realizing someone has been waiting for you all along.